Welcome back to a special edition of the Daily Report Search for Nancy Guthrie. CBS News senior coordinating producer for our crime and public safety unit, Anna Schecter, is with me this hour as we examine every question you have with reporters, law enforcement experts, security experts. We're answering your questions. And we know the FBI has doubled the reward for any information leading to the 84-year-old mother of Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie or an arrest in the case. Let's bring in Briana Whitney. She is a true crime correspondent for 3 TV and CBS 5 in Arizona. She's also the host of the True Crime Arizona podcast and has been closely following the developments in this case. Briana, you've been going down to Tucson. You've been interviewing Sheriff Nanos. What is the latest on what you have to report today?
Yeah, so I just interviewed Sheriff Nanos not too long ago. I think one of the items of note is that he is saying that the Guthrie family is not cleared as of now and that nobody is cleared. He even went as far to say that the man that they detained and released the other night is also not officially cleared. So it seems that they really have not made a lot of progress in terms of ruling people out. I also asked him about the whole controversy between where the DNA is being tested. He says that he is working in tandem with the FBI, that there is not tension. But I did ask him, he had told me that the rapid DNA testing was broken in Tucson last week. That's why they used a Phoenix lab earlier. And I asked him if that had been fixed, because obviously in this case, rapid DNA testing is a huge investigative tool and lead when you're trying to at least get to the lab next. And he said he wasn't sure if that was fixed yet. So definitely still some clarification that needs to be had in the investigation.
And how are authorities treating this versus other cases, Briana?
I think they want to treat this the same as other cases, but the reality is it is not the same as other cases. This is one of the most unusual, most bizarre, and quite frankly, most heartbreaking cases because there's so much mystery here. And I think that's what has people kind of hanging on every little update. But I think where they're struggling is that they're not used to putting out updates all the time. And so when you have the public that wants things in real time, 24/7, it seems that they're holding more to the vest and not being as, approachable, maybe available to the media as they might be in an investigation. But I think the other kind of part to that is that the sheriff's department did what they needed to do, and then they processed that scene, and then they cleared the scene at Nancy Guthrie's home. And now you have the FBI who's saying, yeah, we got to go back in here and look at these things again. And unfortunately, because there isn't crime tape up there, you've had people who have been up and down that driveway near the home, potentially contaminating the scene. So I think they need to adjust a bit. The FBI trying to do what they can now on this side of things. But the reality is it just is not a typical case in the least.
I also think we are insatiable for every little detail and update in this case. Like a car moves an inch and it becomes a new headline, and the area has just been surrounded with true crime influencers and bloggers, and they don't necessarily have the same rigorous journalistic standards that legacy media does, that AZ Family does, or CBS News does. And how is that sort of contributing to not only the spectacle, but is it also influencing law enforcement's work?
I think so, for sure. I would say 100% on that. It's really influencing how everybody's functioning, even the journalists, because you have people who are putting out every little movement, every tiny detail. And the problem, it's good in that people are paying attention, the public, but the problem is that when you have these platforms like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, where people are just posting things in real time without potentially vetting what they're doing, because these somewhat bloggers don't have the same kind of ethics that they have to go through, or certain even legalities that they have to go through. The public wants that, though, and they seem to want every little piece of video and movement in this case, which is, completely unusual for a case like that. It's forcing the journalists to also then ask the sheriff's department and the FBI constantly about every little movement. And I honestly think they've been frustrated by that, the agencies, because they're like, look, we don't typically talk about every little search or deputies out here asking questions. That's just part of every investigation that we ever do. And so that's really changed the game on this. But when you have these platforms, these video platforms where people are consuming clips at a rapid fire pace, it can be really hard to keep up with. And I think that's something that everybody's been struggling with. But when you're in the spotlight as the lead agency on this, Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI, you have even more scrutiny over it.
Really important perspective. Briana Whitney, thank you so much. And you can listen to Briana's True Crime Arizona podcast wherever you get your podcasts. An apparent ransom note relating to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie demanded payment in the cryptocurrency Bitcoin. Now, this case has reignited questions over how difficult that can be to trace. So joining us now is Eric O'Neill. He's a former FBI counterintelligence operative. He's also author of the book Spies, Lies, and Cybercrime, Cybersecurity Tactics to Outsmart Hackers and Disarm Scammers. Eric, can you first explain what make cryptocurrency and Bitcoin particularly unique and potentially appealing to people who might not have the best intentions?
Certainly. Well, look, first of all, cryptocurrency drives cybercrime. It's the way that cybercriminals get paid. It's the way that they hide that money from law enforcement. And there is a great cat and mouse game on the dark web to try to hunt that cybercrime. Now, the misconception is that cryptocurrency is anonymous. It's not. In fact, it goes the other way. Cryptocurrency is all part of a public ledger on something called the blockchain. Think of it like a huge vault with infinite number of lockboxes. And you can buy cryptocurrency and it goes into your lockbox and only you have the keys. And if you send cryptocurrency to someone else, it just moves from your lockbox to their lockbox on the ledger and you give them that key. So to say we're going to put Bitcoin in that wallet would be a misstatement. And what they're hoping is that they get that cryptocurrency. They'll own the Bitcoin. And what that means is that the FBI can watch every transaction that hits that wallet and then where that cryptocurrency moves.
But Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, our name isn't on the lockbox.
Right. There is no name on the lockbox. It's in a public ledger without a name. So what the FBI has to do is follow the cryptocurrency. What'll happen is they'll put it in that wallet, and then the criminals, if they're wise and smart, will try to move it. And what they do is try to launder that money through what's called mixers on the dark web that put a lot of different cryptocurrency in one box, in one wallet, and then spread it out to different places.
Oh my gosh.
The FBI, though, is very adept at following that money. And what they do is they follow the transaction by transaction by transaction using a tool that we call chain analysis. We do that with my company, NexaSure. And when you follow it until it finally goes to a regulated entity like a bank or a entity like Coinbase, because at some point the bad guys have to turn that cryptocurrency into money, otherwise they can't spend it. And it's at that point that the FBI can hopefully freeze the cryptocurrency, determine who owns that final wallet that is connected to a regulated bank, and then have an identity of a cyber criminal or one of their associates.
And Eric, a man was arrested for allegedly sending an imposter random demand to the Guthrie family. So how common are fraud attempts like this, demanding payment in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies?
They're very common. It's an incredibly common scam. Cyber criminals launch these scams throughout the year, usually around holidays. I mean, we're right near Valentine's Day right now. Romance scams and Valentine's Day scams are a huge thing. And I'm not surprised that this was one of probably the most public scams to try to get the family to send cryptocurrency. I'm sure there's other. And of course, we're also questioning whether the ransom notes, the original ransom notes that were sent to TMZ and other local stations are actually the kidnappers or yet another scam.
Eric O'Neill, fascinating. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
All right, let's go back to our viewer questions, Anna. So I'm going to go ahead and go to viewer question number 2. Why haven't they paid the ransom?
Well, the FBI has been working with the Guthrie family, so they had a strategy in place. They responded to the ransom note, and then they didn't get a response back, which is why the family put out the video of Savannah in between her 2 siblings, trying to establish that line of communication so that they could negotiate. So without any line of communication, to put money in it is a big risk. Now, in hindsight, maybe they could have put a little bit to see if that cryptocurrency would move, just like Eric was explaining, so that the FBI could follow it. But they had a strategy in place and they stuck to it. And so far that we know of, there's no money that's gone into that Bitcoin wallet.
Do we have time for one more question in this segment? All right, let's go to viewer question 3. Why isn't the family putting up a $1 million reward?
It's an interesting question. I guess a lot of people want to know about the family, but they have a strategy. If the FBI had thought that that was a great idea, they probably would have suggested that to the family.
Yeah, I'm sure the family is literally sitting there thinking, we will do literally anything. We will try anything. But the FBI probably has to stop them from doing everything. I mean, because there has to be a step-by-step. They're the ones that have experience with this, as unusual as this case is.
And they want to be strategic. They don't want to be haphazardly just throwing strategies around. They came up with a plan, and they've really stuck to it. They've been very disciplined, and the FBI wants them to. Sometimes when the family goes out and does something on their own because they get frustrated or they panic and they want to just put a PSA out, that can hinder the investigation. Of course, we're nowhere, we don't know the idea of the suspect 13 days out, so maybe something might have helped, but hindsight's 20/20, and they're sticking to their strategy.
But I mean, as Lance said earlier, we probably know about 5% of what is going on. So
absolutely, they are running down a lot of leads, and they're not sharing the vast majority of that information.
Okay, take a look at the number on your screen. Officials are asking anyone with information to call the sheriff's number you see there or 1-800-CALL-FBI.